A relative of a high-rank official accused of a rape was fully acquitted by court. The victim, though, has no intentions of accepting the verdict and plans to seek justice through appellate trials.
The review of Dilfuza Auezova's appeal against Timur Kalmurzaev, Yerzhan Bostanov and Timur Kilybayev began on Tuesday in southern Kazakhstan. All three were accused of gang rape. During the initial trial, Judge Saparali Ablayev made a scandalous ruling that salmon found on the victim during the examination actually belonged to the woman. Everything was leading up to this man being guilty, but then they were released right from the courtroom while the charges were dropped. This shocked all of us because the judge had definitely made an adequate decision. The appeals hearing was held behind the closed doors and even public defenders were not allowed inside. The victim's mother is still afraid to talk to the press, but at the same time she cannot stay silent. Her daughter was raped in front of her little son while everything was filmed on a mobile phone. This resulted in a severe trauma and the young woman attempted several suicides. Currently, she is undergoing therapy with psychologists of the Legal Advice Center. The Coalition of Women's Organizations of Kazakhstan launched a campaign in support of Dilfuza Auezova. Feminists suspect that the infamously lenient decision of the first instance court had a clear motive. Perhaps one of the rapists is a family member of some senior official, which is rather obvious by the names involved. The judicial system of South Kazakhstan is being pressured as a result. Feminists have sent letters and appeals to the Court and Prosecutor's Office of the South Kazakhstan region and now preparing an address to the OEC chairman, the Foreign Affairs Minister of the country, Kanat Saudabayev. The women believe that the public control over the case will be extremely high.
Human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin, previously convicted for libel and released on bail last fall, fears he could be placed back to prison with even more severe terms than before. Vadim Kuramshin was detained in Astana supposedly for violating parole immediately following a press conference on June 3rd, where the human rights activist spoke about the beatings of prisoners in the colony 159/6 in the Karaganda region. Kuramshin says that before traveling to Astana, he submitted a notice to a local inspector, which cannot be proven, as the document was never registered in the station. In addition, police officers are trying to pursue Kuramshin's neighbors to defame his reputation. The human rights activist hopes for an adequate response of officials as well as representatives of the Geneva Committee on Human Rights, where he recently appealed, although there is still a high probability of him being sent back to prison. My biggest fear is not the term itself, but the fact that I might end up in Azbasar, Astana or Stepnogorsk. I do not want to end up there because these prisons are the worst in terms of treating inmates. Kazakhstan is trying to obtain a share in the Karachaganak oil project. The proposal of a deal was made to the consortium right after it was sued in international arbitration. The next report has all the details.
Kazakhstan intends to obtain a share in the last major project owned exclusively by foreign oil companies. However, the consortium Karachaganak Petroleum Operating so far refuses to comment on the proposal of Kazmunaygaz to acquire 10% of the shares. The only answer from Kazmunaygaz is that they do not comment on the issue. The confirmation of a Kazmunaygaz proposal to the consortium came through the head of the national company during an investment summit in Almaty. The news, however, was pretty much expected by all observers since the time Kazakh law enforcement agencies began prosecuting participants of Karachaganak Petroleum Operating.
If there will be suitable commercial conditions, we want to buy a 10% share in Karachaganak Petroleum Operating, and we have already sent the offer to the consortium. The talks have not started yet, although once they make their move, we will continue working in said direction.
The amount of the possible transaction is not disclosed. However, expert Oleg Yegorov believes it will be anywhere from $1 to $1.5 billion. Interestingly, this is approximately the same amount the state is suing the consortium for in international arbitration. The action was followed immediately by the offer from Kazmunaygaz.
Some not very honest methods are being employed here. The state imposes billion-dollar fines and says that a company violates local legislature and principles of relations, leaving it only two choices, either to pay or give up a share in the project.
Experts say that the suit will be recalled if the consortium will agree to the conditions set by Kazmunaygaz. At the same, operators intend to continue negotiating. Chevron, which holds 20% in the Karachaganak Petroleum Operating, opposes the cutting of its share in the project, and it is likely Lukoil will follow suit. The main bargaining, though, will be done through the Italian Eni and British BG Group, which hold 32.5% of the Karachaganak shares.
Russian companies Lukoil and Gazpromneft are not interested in purchasing the Pavlodar petrochemical plant. Last week, the head of the national company Kazmunaygas Kayrgeldi Kabildin said that the talks on the sale of the plant's controlling stake to some Russian companies are already underway. Meanwhile, Kazakh experts are trying to understand why there is no domestic need for the Pavlodar plant.
Last August, the national company Kazmunaygas has bought a 58% stake in the Pavlodar petrochemical plant, intending to solve the issue with the deficit of the high-octane fuel in the country and also to stabilize petroleum prices. 10 months later, no one remembers about strategic goals anymore, as Kazmunaygas is actually looking for buyers. All the Russian investors are on the top of the list. Gazprom and Lukoil appear not interested in the shares of the Kazakh company.
At the moment, we are not considering the purchase of oil processing refineries.
The Pavlodar petrochemical plant is in dire need of modernization, which could cost up to $600 million, says Russian analyst Dmitry Alexandrov. Perhaps this is the main reason for why the plant is being sold. Alexandrov advises Gazprom to seriously consider the offer if the Kazakhs will advance some favorable terms.
The most attractive buyer is Gazpromneft, as it will provide a good link between the Pavlodar petrochemical plant and the plant in Omsk, owned by Gazpromneft and working on the processing of West Siberian oil. The buyer is rather obvious in this case.
Kazakh economist Kanat Birintayev sees Kazmunaygas as a regular speculator. Additionally, the national company is not representing state interest, but rather interest of some specific persons and interest groups standing behind the affiliate companies.
Kazmunaygas will make cash from the sale of the plant's shares. These shares could be owned by the specific individual or a group. This way, everything will seem good and legal for these individuals and the plant itself.
According to Birintayev, the third wave of the legalization is currently underway in Kazakhstan. Also, this will not be the last deal signed to meet the interest of some third parties. In 2011, 8 affiliate companies of the national holding Samruk Kazana will be ready for the IPO, which could be seen as another reason for the money laundering of the oligarchic groups.
It is possible that the pasteurellosis outbreak that caused the mass death of the saiga antelopes in the West Kazakhstan region resulted from the chlorine poisoning. The chemical could have been part of the poisonous gas brought to the region with mist from the famous Russian test site Kapustin Yar.
The mass death of saiga antelopes in the West Kazakhstan region could have been caused by the pasteurellosis outbreak resulting from chlorine poisoning. The contamination of the chemical was found on the samples of soil, plants and water at the site of the disaster. According to the head of the fauna management of the Forest Enhancing Economy Committee, Bakitbek Dusikev, specialists are currently looking for the link between the mysterious mist that was seen over the pasture and the chlorine.
At the moment, the corresponding bodies are examining the link between the mist and the chlorine contamination in soil and plants. We have sent inquiries to the Russian Defense Ministry to clear the situation with possible tests during this period, but we have not received any answers yet.
The senior scientist of the virus laboratory of the Microbiology and Virology Institute questions the pasteurellosis diagnosis.
Pasteurellosis is an infectious disease and it cannot kill so many animals in such a short period of time. There are special virus infections that cause similar massive infections with high mortality rates. I believe that it would happen in this case.
While scientists are trying to solve the mystery of mass death of antelopes, the use of Uralsk is trying to draw wider public attention to this environment tragedy. On Monday evening, around 20 people dropped to the ground in front of the West Kazakhstan Regional Administration building, imitating dead saigas. The authorities, however, ignored the action.
12,000 antelopes died, but nobody reacted. This is wrong because we are all living beings.
These were all the latest updates from Kazakhstan. Thank you for watching us. Goodbye.